Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is lovely to be here with you all today for this live session. And it's so lovely to have you joining me here today, Rebecca. Would you please, Rebecca, introduce yourself to those of us who are joining us here today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your live. I'm Rebecca Allen, and I run Illuminate Personal Growth, which is a leadership coaching business. We're based in Sydney, but we work with clients all over the world. And we have a particular interest in working with women who are looking to move up in their careers and feel like they're struggling and unable to sort of get there by themselves. So that's a really kind of key area that I work with in the private space.
Amazing. And if you don't know me, I'm Lucy Owens. I'm the founder of Style Risers, and I help driven, high-achieving women use personal style to accelerate their confidence, their visibility, and their executive presence. And today, Rebecca and I are going to be talking about what actually gets you promoted. So competence will absolutely get you so far, but there is a ceiling, and for a lot of women, when they reach that ceiling, there can be a feeling of stuckness or just not quite sure what to do, and it can often be this concept of presence that can be keeping them, at that point. So perhaps you have felt invisible, or you felt overlooked, or perhaps you've seen someone else in an organization get the opportunity that you really wanted to get. And so if any of that resonates with you, you are in the right place for our conversation today, because what we're going to be talking about is, why that happens, but also what you can actually do about it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And Rebecca, you just mentioned, you have an interest, you really love working with female managers and leaders. And if we think about when women are in that period where they might feel a bit stuck, or they're just not getting ahead, or they have perhaps missed out on an opportunity, what's the most common things that you tend to hear from those women?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are common themes. That's the thing that's really interesting about it, I think. When people reach out to me, there are a lot of the same sort of challenges, the same sort of vocabulary that kind of comes up. And I think you mentioned invisibility. I think invisibility is a common one. And it might be a perceived invisibility. So you might actually be visible but not feel it. But of course, you can be visible. You cannot be on the radar at all. So I think invisibility is a core one. I think another one is that feeling of, I don't know what else I can possibly do. Like, I have done everything I can think of. I have delivered every single, KPI. I've ticked every single box, and still yet here I am. Other people might be promoted around you. And I think another thing that I hear a lot, especially with that emerging leader market, is, I know I need to be more strategic. I have no idea what that means. I don't know how to do that. And I think there's a sense of, the question you have to ask yourself at this point is, do I want to continue doing this the way I've been doing it? Or do I need to try something different? Because I think, over delivering again and sort of demonstrating your competence, to your word again, the question is that the thing that you need to move the dial forwards, or do we need to look at something different?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we can get stuck in a bit of a cycle of doing great work, hoping that gets noticed, but there's almost like these unwritten rules of the game, and sometimes we need to understand what they are in order to be able to move forward, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you see? Do you see sort of common themes with what I'm describing in terms of, those initial problems that people reach out to you for?
Absolutely, Rebecca. Yeah, I think it's, as you say, like, people will often also use the same vocabulary, and the visibility, as you said, is a really big one as well. And I think there's it's so important at this level of the game that we have to understand how our clothing choices are shaping perception. And they're also shaping our own confidence in the way that we show up. And if we're not really clear on that and understanding what people are going to interpret from the way that we show up, that can stop people from having the visibility that they want. And what I see a lot is, and this will be, women will often speak to this, is if they don't know what to wear, they'll fall back on what feels comfortable, what feels safe, and sort of stick within that zone, which, it might be totally professional and totally appropriate, but that is really not helping them stand out and decision makers be able to see them in the way that they want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so, and there's all these, I sort of think when it comes to, when you're in, an organization, like there's all these different touch points we have. You might see someone in a meeting, you might see someone in the elevator, you might see someone in the lunchroom, there's all these little touch points that we get to have with people. And this is where, beyond the competence, it's like, what are the little, mini impressions that we're giving other people, as well as the times when we're with people for longer periods of time. But, what's the overall impression that they're building up about us and our value and our ability that's communicated through so much more than just our competence and our results alone, which, people don't always get to know that. Your direct manager might know that, but people 2 levels up from you simply may not be aware of that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, because the reality is somebody else's perception of you is the reality for them, right? So based on what
exactly, it's their reality
or what you're not doing, forms their perception of you, and I think you used the word safe earlier, and I think safety is a really interesting word, because I think we're all sort of programmed to do things that make us feel safe. And repeating the same processes because you can deliver, because you can get results, feels safe. And so really what we're talking about is when we're looking at stretching ourselves and demonstrating that we're ready for something new, maybe a new role, then it takes new thinking, and it takes that decision, if you like, to jump out of your comfort zone and to look at doing things that are actually feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now. But these are the things that, I think are often missing. And that edge and that ability to start thinking more strategically about, how am I showing up? And, is my intention really being seen by other people, or are they seeing something quite different from what I'm intending? Because we all have intentions. But the truth is, there's often a mismatch or a gap, if you like, between your intention and how you're trying to be seen, trying to be perceived, and the reality, the perception that those stakeholders have of you.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And there's a level of self-awareness there that needs to be, we need to be mindful of that, because as you say, there often is a gap, and we can be thinking that we are doing all the right things, and on the other side of the room, there's all these other things going on that we may not be aware of, and that are contributing to how other people are seeing us and interpreting us, and ultimately deciding whether or not we are ready for the next level and to step into that next level.
Yeah, that's the tragedy. Other people are deciding for you, right? You might feel like you're ready, but in my experience, unless, you're demonstrating readiness, i.e. showing up ready that you can perform that role, and you're thinking in alignment with that role rather than in alignment with the role you're in at the moment, you're always going to feel like you're pigeonholed, I think, and stuck in a role you've probably outgrown.
Yeah. And I think it is, if it is about really other people need to be able to see your value, don't they?
Yeah,
and they need, and sometimes as well, I think women, we can downplay our capabilities too, and we may not want to talk about all the great things that we do. But as you say, if we can be strategic in the way that we show up, in the way that we choose to showcase ourselves through our appearance and so forth, we can help other people see our value. Because sometimes I think it can feel a bit out of touch, and perhaps it can just the whole executive presence thing can feel like this conceptual thing, and what does it look like practically, and how does it translate into the actions and the behaviors that we need to be taking, and the way that we're showing up through our clothing and appearance. But there are practical steps, and when we can think strategically and understand all the how things are read and how things are interpreted, we can, there are practical steps that you teach, Rebecca, and then that I sort of teach clients about how they can actually do that on day to day in their workplace.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because it does feel a little bit ethereal. Like, what does this actually mean?
Yeah.
Talk about the concepts of authenticity and personal branding.
Yeah.
And how do I actually, apply any of these things? And I think certainly over the years, I mean, you've been in business as long as I have, and I have seen that clients have implemented certain strategies. For example, the same day, you work on them in a session. And even the smallest shifts, I think, can have a phenomenal impact on certainly on how you're perceived. Start just talking in a different way, or you start sharing value in a different way, and just thinking a little bit more about what the business needs, rather than what do I as that individual contributor need to do today. It's like really just elevating and stretching yourself beyond where you are, and thinking differently. And I do think these are the conversations I'm having everywhere at the moment. I think the world has become so much more complex. We're talking about AI all the time, and how AI is shrinking opportunity and shrinking jobs. The reality is it's just changing how we need to look at the value proposition that we bring to an organization now more than ever. And I think getting really clear on that, how do I actually bring value to this business? What does that look like? It's a really important question that everybody should be asking themselves, but specifically at leadership level and emerging leader level.
Yeah. And the value that we bring, and also how can I demonstrate that value to others so that other people see it instantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because I think we assume, because we know it in our heads, that everybody else can see it, or even is defining it as value, because value is a really interesting thing. So I think it's important that we have to back ourselves and recognize where there is value. And you were talking earlier about, that self-promotion piece, which is something a lot of women really, really resist, really don't feel comfortable doing. But again, there are lots of practical ways in which you can do that. And it's part of, the work that both you and I do.
Yeah, because I think also the self-promotion, I think there's also a piece of that related to confidence, and how confident we sort of feel showing up. And I think that, from my perspective, if we think about, if we're going into a workplace and perhaps we've chosen something to wear that doesn't make us feel at our best, or it's been that default fallback option, we've just chucked something on, we might have run out of time or whatever it is. I think we're much less likely to enter into conversations, or to put ourselves forward, or to speak up in meetings, or if there is an opportunity to self-promote, we may shrink back from that. Versus if you do show up wearing something and you feel polished and you feel put together, you're much more likely to carry yourself differently, to speak differently, because you don't have the background noise about, am I wearing the right thing today, or I feel uncomfortable, or just a general lack of excitement, I guess, in what you're wearing, kind of, drags, sort of, will drag you down a bit, or you've got to work a lot harder to be able to put yourself forward. And I think that's where both the different elements or the different aspects of what we do, Rebecca, are so intertwined, because they both really feed off each other, and they both really help contribute to other people being able to see our value, and you looking like you do belong in the rooms that you want to go into, not just those rooms that you're in today, which is what you just spoke about. It's, you know, and I sort of think it's about asking yourself, you know, is what I'm wearing, and are my clothing choices, are they working for me? Not like at the level that I'm at now, but at the level that I want to step into, because that's really what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, from a, leadership coaching perspective, it goes right to the heart of human psychology, right? It's about identity. And from your angle, it's around styling and how you present on a physical basis, and how that impacts your cognitive behaviors, right? It's how do I think about myself?
Exactly.
How do I walk? How do I stand? What's my posture like? All of those things change when you're wearing an outfit that makes you feel more confident about yourself, and you're not thinking about bits and bobs to do with the outfit. You just know it just looks good and it makes you feel aligned. And I think from a leadership coaching perspective, identity is everything, right? We have to really identify as being a leader. Like, what does that look like? Sound like, feel like, and what would you do in that environment? Like, what kind of a leader do you want to be? It's all about who do you want to be in this role. And that's the kind of magic when you start working at that level. It's not what you're doing, it's who you're becoming, and that shift that you're making, that transformation that you're making, to really show up at your true kind of capability and potential. And that's what I love so much about coaching, because you do see these literal transformations happen in relatively short spaces of time, right? I mean, it's the same for you as well, right? You kind of work with somebody and then you're like, that's a really incredible like grounding now that you've got some foundations to build on. And of course you can build the strategies on top of that. But that foundational work on identity, I think is where it has to start.
Yeah. And Rebecca, is there a particular client or like a particular situation with a client that comes to mind where that, whether it was that identity piece or, some shifts that you helped her work through that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's lots. I think a really kind of common challenge, and where you can really get game-changing moves, is, for example, I had a client who was doing extraordinarily well at work. However, she wasn't getting into those really important meeting rooms. She wasn't getting those opportunities to sort of be at that decision-making table. And just like, I just don't understand what else I have to do. And she was actually thinking of leaving. The reality was the key stakeholders around her saw huge value in what she was doing, but she wasn't making those bigger asks about what she believed she was capable of next. So they assumed she was comfortable in the role she was in. She wasn't. She was desperate for more opportunity, more responsibility, but she wasn't showing up at the right level. She was keeping herself small. She was actually starting to go into that resentment spiral, because she felt like she wasn't valued, even though she was. That was the really interesting irony of it. But she just decided, actually, you know what? I'm ready for this. I need to make this step up. This identity needs to shift. I need to start demonstrating new behaviors to show that I can do this already. And the irony was, is she got promoted quite quickly after that. But then another internal opportunity came up. She went for that as well. And within 6 months, she actually got promoted twice. So that for me is the perfect example of somebody who just needs that sort of reset in terms of how she's looking at herself, how she's seeing her potential, rewiring a little bit of the thinking, and then working on some of the strategies to help her increase her visibility, build credibility with stakeholders, talk about the impact that she's making, all sorts of different things that she did differently. It made an incremental kind of impact. It was the difference was huge.
And that's a massive, those are massive steps forward in a short space of time, 2 promotions in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think it just speaks to, Rebecca, that the whole thing about it doesn't have to be a long and arduous process.
No.
It can actually be really fast. It can be an enjoyable process to go through. I think it's one where we are going deeper into who we are as people, our, what we are able to contribute, to, stretch ourselves to the next level. And, sometimes we can think of those things as, taking a really long time, but it can be as quick as that.
Yeah. It is about asking the right questions. So
Yeah.
I know from your perspective that you're like me, right? The value, if you like, the beauty, if you like, in terms of coaching is it's asking clients the right questions to get them unstuck.
Yeah.
And what would you say, is the magic, if that's the right word, but it is the transformational magic that you can support a client to achieve through that coaching process?
Yeah. Do I think it's helping them see themselves in a different way, because I think we can have so many ways that we box ourselves in through all sorts of, different limiting beliefs. From a clothing and style perspective, it may be, I can only wear these styles of clothing, this is what I've always worn. That I don't shop there, that's not a store for me. We can have all these different beliefs. We can also just have beliefs about, and this does come up, a couple of times, it's around our self-value and how much time and energy we want to put into things, and we can perhaps just not give ourselves the time that we need. And maybe that might be going and getting your hair done, or something as simple as that can give you a big confidence boost. And I think, Rebecca, where we come in is helping people, gently, giving them a different perspective of things. Or, for me, showing a lady who perhaps hasn't felt confidence in her body, or has had lots of, shape changes or hormonal changes, which happen naturally, and just showing her, yes, you can still dress in a way that feels really good. You feel confident, you feel comfortable in the way that you're showing up, and helping them see themselves in a whole new light.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe even to them, it can feel like it's not possible to start with. I think that's the thing that's
Well,
really
they don't know
interesting.
where to start because it feels so big.
It feels so overwhelming. And I think that's the thing that's really fascinating, is that by sort of breaking it down and going through a sort of a process, and the process is very much tailored to everybody. You can really help them sort of get from A to B, but step one at a time, step two at a time. And it is phenomenal how by just taking those steps can make such a big difference.
And working through it systematically, I think, and sort of, because you take one step and then you sort of build on that, and then you take the next one and you build on that, and really then at the end of that you have a whole suite of tools that you can use and you can apply.
100%.
Yeah. And so, Rebecca, we for those ladies who are out there listening today, Rebecca and I have really thought about how we can take both sides of what we do and put them together into one container, or something where we can actually help women who do want to get promoted, or who perhaps even are, then you might just be looking for a new role. How we can really support you to understand how to do this in a really practical way. And that is what we're going to go really deep on this, aren't we, Rebecca, in our workshop, which we've got coming up.
Which is coming up on the 30th of May.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's so much synergy in terms of what Lucy and I do, and we support the same clients on the private side. And it kind of, when I mean that, I mean sort of private one-to-one coaching side. And so it makes total sense. I help clients build sort of personal brand and presence and profile within the organization through leadership strategy and showing readiness for their next role. And Lucy does that through styling in terms of how you're presenting yourself and showing up. And these things are so synergistic and so valuable that we thought, why not combine these two different disciplines and put them together in one package so that you don't have to go to two different places. You can come to one workshop, and we're going to be talking about both those sides to help you really level up. And the reality is, at the moment, I'm having conversations with clients who feel like there aren't opportunities at the moment because of flat structures and the way that the economy is at the moment and all those sorts of things. What I would say to you is that being proactive in this space is always going to be so valuable, because when the opportunities are available, then you're going to be ready and you're going to be first in line, and you're going to be doing all that groundwork to build that credibility and visibility with your stakeholders. And then you'll be top of mind. And I think that's the key. So whether you're going for a promotion right now or whether it's something you're thinking about in the future, I think in either situation, then this will be extremely valuable to you.
Yeah, because it's really about helping decision makers think of you first, whether the role is there now or it's going to be there in a few months' time. It's that you are going to be top of mind, and we are going to give you the exact steps that you need to do. So this is a 90-minute workshop, and we are going to be there with you, and you are actually going to be building your 90-day career plan. So you are going to have a series of steps. You're going to have a really clear guide of what you need to do in the next 90 days. So you're going to walk away feeling so much clarity about your career. And you are going to, I guess, really have the confidence that around, looking and sounding like the job that you are going for, because that is what is going to make the difference in this space. And as you said, Rebecca, the people who are proactive and start to position themselves in the right way, they are the ones. They're going to be seen as ready, and they're going to be the ones who get through.
Absolutely. I also think there's actually a lot of opportunity around right now, even though it might feel like there actually is a lot of opportunity. It might not be a kind of vertical opportunity, but there are lots of different kinds of ways that you can build your profile and add value to an organization. I think some of those things we're going to be talking about in the workshop. So there are limited places. I was just going to throw that in there because there's only two of us.
So we want to keep it intimate.
There are only 20 spots. So if you would like to join us, it's called How to Build Executive Presence That Gets You Promoted. And 13th of May, 6:30 p.m. And that's Australian Eastern Time.
Yep. And I will drop the link at the bottom of this live session. So if you would like to get your ticket, you can do so through that link. And if you have a friend that you would like to come with you, I always like doing things with people because I think it's great to have each other accountable. So you can potentially work through your 90-day career plans afterwards and be holding each other accountable to those. But there is a special price, if there's two of you that want to come. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for bringing again to this LinkedIn Live your insights and your wisdom around this topic. And I'd love to see some of the ladies that have joined us here today in the room, because you have a wealth of knowledge to share, Rebecca, and I can't wait to go much deeper into this topic in the workshop on May 13. But thanks you once again for coming on and sharing with people here.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to see you, Lucy. And I can't wait for the workshop because I know what everyone has got in store for them.
Yeah, amazing. All right, I'll be back here for another LinkedIn Live in 2 weeks, or I might see you on the 13th of May. Take care, everybody. Speak to you soon. Bye.